Hey, welcome back. I'm John Tabler, and today I'm going to talk about honey. And honey is one of the greatest things to use for sweetener. You make great sourdough bread, you put butter and honey on it. And of course, we all know honey's good, but I'm going to talk a little bit differently about honey than somebody might have told you before. The best honey to get, or really imperative to get, is raw honey. And what is raw honey? Raw honey is honey that comes straight from the hive and is completely untouched as far as heat goes. And why is that? The same reason that with pasteurization, things will not ferment and things won't keep the same. When honey is heated, the same thing happens. And so all the honey manufacturers, pretty much most all of them, heat their honey. And they filter the honey, but they heat it so that it will pour easier and go into the bottles. Now, they're still able to call it raw honey because they don't really have a definition for what raw is. So when I say raw, I mean untouched. But unfortunately, it's almost, you can't even decipher when you go look at honey what to actually get. Now, I've heard in the past that bees won't even go back to a hive if the honey has been heated to a certain level. Say, at the time that I heard it, it was 105, and it's interesting because the temperature was actually the same temperature that people can run a fever to typically and survive. So it's in that same ballpark, which I found really interesting. Something happens over that level to living things that just completely turn it into a situation where it's preserved and kept okay, like honey is, to starting to degrade. And you know, diabetics can actually eat honey that is raw, has been untouched, completely cold packed, and it won't spike their blood sugar in the same ways. And I'm not going to get exactly specific on that because there's so many articles online about it. You can put, can diabetics eat raw honey? But I would say that it's an analogy that you could make is similar to eating a raw apple as compared to eating, having the juice after it's been pasteurized, or having orange juice that is squeezed freshly out of an orange compared to having orange juice that has been squeezed and then pasteurized. It has an entirely different effect on blood sugar levels, spiking blood sugar. Once it's been pasteurized, it's like a fast-acting sugar, and these are the ones that aren't good for you. And so if you can have fresh squeezed orange juice or fresh squeezed apple juice, which is much harder to do with an apple, of course, but both of these type of things will ferment too, like sourdough bread with freshly ground wheat that hasn't been heated, or in the same way, cabbage will ferment if it hasn't already been cooked. It will ferment naturally. Well, it's interesting in the honey world because sweeteners that we have won't be breaking down or cause negative effects on your body if they have been taken from the hive and not heated. And even manufacturers that say that their honey's raw will heat them to 120 degrees to get them in the bottle and still put raw on it. Now here's one that I buy that's called Raw Honey and Comb, and of course it looks like it's never been touched, but I've called some manufacturers before that claim raw, and of course it's really hard to get the answer. You got to get the guy out in the warehouse, but come to find out, more often than not, most of the time, they're heated to 120, at least somewhere around there. And it's still allowed to be called raw. Now, if you want to get the best honey that you know has been unheated, the one that I've found, and I don't get anything from this company other than I order my honey from them and have them ship it all the way across the country because it's so good. And this is what I get. I get Honey Pacifica. And the reason why I started buying it at the time, I lived on the West Coast and they have it in the stores there. But not only is it the best tasting like ever, and not only does it say raw, unfiltered, Southern California sage honey, but it also says cold packed. It says raw unfiltered honey, but they right there it says cold packed. And so they put a seal on it. It says cold packed and it's raw. So they don't don't heat their honey. That's one of the only ones I really know, well, without doing detective work, to actually have the honey be completely raw like it is in the hive, unless you find a beekeeper. But then again, you really need to know the beekeeper and know the place, because some of these guys will buy honey from other places and even add water into it and things like that. But if you have this honey and it's cold packed and it's raw, it's actually extremely good for you. You cannot compare it with a sweetener or another kind of sugar that spikes your blood sugar and has negative effects on your body. You know, this is in the Bible. One of the great descriptions of the most joyous of foods is the land of milk and honey. And if you think about that, that's really the land of ice cream. It doesn't have the vanilla in there, but milk, honey, cream and honey, we pretty much have ice cream. So I thought of that one day, the land of ice cream. Honey is a magical food because it's preserved. It doesn't get old. And when it's cold packed like that, all the nutrients, the enzymes and all the things that you get from it are amazing. And so always get raw, cold packed honey and make sure of it. And if you do, it's not only going to taste better, and I got to take a taste right now. I can't really even describe the difference in that, even compared to this one that I buy. If it doesn't say raw though, they've definitely heated it way up. It's going to have negative effects on your body. Sure, it'll taste like honey, doesn't have the health benefits of it. Just like current pickles in the market are really not pickles. Pickles originally were fermented cucumbers. In the same way you ferment sourdough or you ferment cabbage, it creates a living probiotic, and it's not in pickles now, or cheese, or wine, or anything, unless you ferment it naturally, and it has to be done with items that have not been heated. And so I could shorten this video way down and say just don't get heated honey, but it's very difficult to figure out how not to get heated honey. You really have to check with the place, because most of the time they'll say raw, but it's still heated. But you need to get unheated honey for your health. I know you're going to love it. Remember that one, Pacifica honey. If I have other sources of it, or if you do, post them in the comments below. I'd really like to know. I'd like to order some from other places and try them, but it's the best to get like that. Like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.